Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the season finale of Season 1 here at Crunch Time with Kruck. As you notice, we're wearing our special jerseys
Yes.
today. It says Crunch Time, and on the back is our nicknames, Mad Max and Kruck. Special shout out to Jason Krukenberg for buying these jerseys for us.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Dad.
man. Appreciate it.
They're awesome. And then we're going to move right into things. First thing we're tackling today is the NFL Draft Recap. What is something that you want to mention first with that?
Kruck, I'm going to first talk about we talked about the first round last week. We talked about Trey Lance. We talked about Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson. And we also talked about, again, Devontae Smith, Penei Sewell. Where would Justin Fields fall? Obviously, to your Bears. Again, everyone's talking about maybe he's the franchise quarterback of Chicago. But I'm going to mention just a couple of, day two guys, kind of guys that I looked at here that were very interesting to my mind. One of them was in the second round with the Atlanta Falcons with Richie Grant, the safety from UCF. I really like this kid. This kid is athletic. He makes a lot of plays. And what he does really well is he's ball skills. He kind of reminds me like a Malik Hooker from Ohio State, which he's a very athletic guy. And for Atlanta especially, replacing Keanu Neal that actually went to the Cowboys. That's a big fit for them and the organization. Another guy I really like. He beat up Ohio State Kruck like crazy. Rondell Moore going to the Cardinals. I think this guy, yes, he's a little small. He needs to get in the weight room a little bit, but he's an athletic, speedy guy. And especially for the NFL, where we're turning to, Kruck, that's what we need is speed. And speed is an important part for the organization. So if he can do it against Ohio State, maybe we could see if he can cook some people against in the NFL. And then finally, another receiver I kind of want to look at is this North Carolina receiver, De'Ami Brown. I really like this kid, and especially for Washington. If you look at Washington, I always said this about Philadelphia, too. They needed some receivers and deep threats. Washington also needs that as well. They kind of need more people like a Terry McLaurin, now getting Samuel on their team as well, and especially now with Fitzpatrick being your quarterback. And how long has that guy been in the league, Kruck? I mean, he's been in the league forever, so he needs a lot of help for the organization. So those are kind of some of the day two guys I'm looking at. You got any interesting names for you?
Well, just looking at it, I broke it down in terms of, grading the organizations. Yeah. And the team who I feel like did the best throughout the entire draft was the Atlanta Falcons. I gave them an A+. Kyle Pitts was a tight end that they desperately needed to try to elongate Matt Ryan's future with the team. He's on the back end of what he has left in his career, but with this nice tight end pickup, he's going to have more options, hoping that Julio stays. There have been some very small rumors of him leaving, but hopefully he stays. And Kyle Pitts is definitely an offensive weapon to look at. Also, Richie Grant at safety.
I mentioned him, yeah.
He's a really great pickup. I feel like the Falcons need to work on their secondary as well.
Sure.
They picked up two more offensive linemen, Jalen Mayfield as well as Drew Dalman. And you can never have enough offensive linemen, in my opinion, because good offensive linemen in their prime last between 2 to 4 years. So after about 2 to 4 years, they're going to be on the decline. Not everybody is Joe Thomas with the Cleveland Browns. And you got to continuously flush them in and out. It's hard with having quarterbacks going, Tom Brady length 20 years and offensive linemen averaging right around 3 to 5. But then also they picked up two linemen, but they also picked up two corners. So Avery Williams and Darren Hall. So the defensive backs for the Falcons are going to be young, but at the same time, I feel like these young guys are going to be a great difference for them. Yeah. Another team that I graded, just real quick, was the Cleveland Browns. They got I gave them an A. Not an A+, but an A. They got Greg Newsome the second. He's a corner. They had two linebackers, Tony Fields the second, and then Jeremiah
Owusu-Koramoah, yep.
Yeah.
I got you, man.
Got a hard time with that name. Also at linebacker. And then James Hudson at offensive tackle. The Browns need to keep linemen coming in to keep Baker healthy, keep their running backs healthy. And then they also got a running back, Demetric Felton, at running back. So I give them also an A. It's great pickups. They need to be able to keep the ball. They run the ball. That is one of their main things as the Cleveland Browns. So the offensive lineman, the running back, great pickups. The defensive players, the two linebackers and the corner, also great pickups because that's what ended up hurting them in the long run. Yes, they did run into the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are just a great all-around team. But a better defense will make up for what a good offense cannot produce.
Yes, and especially with Cleveland now picking up, Mayfield's fifth-year option, now thinking about the future of him being the franchise quarterback. And I think that's very important for Cleveland fans, especially is what is his growth going to be like now? Is now he's the time. He's the time to shine. He's going to have to make certain plays, especially with Chubb and those other running backs. I feel like the running game, like you mentioned, is the Browns' total offense. And just one more thing real quick, Kruck. I mean, I really liked what the Dallas Cowboys did. Not just their first pick, but obviously what they needed to address on the defensive end. We saw the Cowboys defense last year get beat up in the secondary like crazy. I mean, I don't know. There were some stats out there. I don't remember, but all I know it was really bad. So that's all I'm going to say. And what they did is they mostly got, I think, at least 6 or 7 defensive players in the draft. That's already telling you, especially getting the first-round pick in Micah Parsons, which I believe that kid is going to be a star. I feel like he's going to be a plug-and-play player. What Dan Quinn does with him is going to be very important. Is because can he run off the edge? Can he make plays up the middle? Because what he did against Ohio State was crazy. So what is he going to do now in the NFL? We'll have to see, Kruck.
Well, and then one more team that I want to grade just because they're close to home and close to my heart, the Chicago Bears. I gave them an A. At first, as I told you guys, I was not thrilled about Justin Fields at QB.
Changed your mind, huh?
The more I watch him, the more I like him. I was one of those stereotypical NFL people where I don't like Ohio State. But it's okay because this guy's good. I know you're an Ohio State fan.
Hey, just I'm looking at you. No, you good.
So,
man.
I mean, I got to give credit where credit's due. He came out last year, and he was the number 2 quarterback at the end of the year. I don't know how he fell to number 5 before the draft.
Yeah, that's –
But, I mean, he's a great pickup. The Bears also got Tavon Jenkins and then Larry Borum, 2 great offensive linemen, which the Bears desperately need to be able to keep running backs and quarterbacks on the team and healthy. Because if you're constantly getting hit in the backfield, you're not going to want to be there, and you're not going to be healthy for very long. They also got a cornerback, a defensive back, corner, Thomas Graham Jr., to try to fill the spot of Fuller. Personally, I thought Fuller was good his first couple of years. There were a ton of interceptions that he did not catch, but I can't really speak from example. I'm an offensive lineman. I don't have the best of hands, but being a corner, I would expect you to catch the ball that hits your chest and then your hands. So that's what I have on the draft.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, hopefully we'll see what Chicago does, especially that Tevin Jenkins pick. I really wanted that. I wanted the Bengals to get him, but obviously, we can't change the past. But now we can see rivals, though, in Green Bay. There's a lot of things are going on there, especially with their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Right now he's having different altercations or opinion about wanting to play with the Packers next season. Sources have been saying that Rodgers is feeling very pissed and mad with the organization. Still, the general manager, Brian Gutekunst, still believes he's going to be the quarterback of the future. So, Kruck, how do you see this thing playing out here in Green Bay?
I mean, honestly, Aaron Rodgers wants out, but he's under contract. That's one of the huge things that you have to remember during this situation. Somebody else, if they want to get Aaron Rodgers, they have to pick up his contract. So that's something that you really have to be careful of. At first, you heard that Aaron Rodgers, he simply wants to restructure his contract. He wants, more money because he's an MVP level quarterback.
Yeah.
And, if you produce, if you make yourself worth it, you should be able to get that money. Green Bay says, we knew you were an MVP quarterback. That's why we're paying you this much. This is how much we think you're worth. He says, no, I'm worth this. Green Bay is not willing to budge, so he finally said, you know what? I just want to leave at this point. And that really sent ruffles through the community, especially when some of the team's GMs and, people who make the trade moves were contacting Aaron Rodgers' agent and not the GM of the Packers. So the agent for Aaron Rodgers, his name is slipping me, but the agent for Aaron Rodgers was getting calls about, Aaron Rodgers coming to play for whoever about 2 weeks before the GM even knew what was going on. So, I mean, there's a lot of shady moves going here for Green Bay, but that's why Bear fans don't like Green Bay.
Well, that's definitely true. But, I mean, like you said, this whole situation with Aaron Rodgers going on is just interesting and wild to me. You know what I mean? It's because when you look at it, Aaron Rodgers has played with the Packers for his whole career. And, and I think obviously people are going to say, well, it started that he fell when he was in the draft board. He was supposed to be a big quarterback, but he fell all the way down early in his career. And then everyone's looking at, what about Jordan Love instead of getting more receivers to help him out here in the past season's draft? But, I mean, overall, I think it's what Aaron Rodgers believes is best for him. Obviously, he's got a lot of things also going around his plate. He, like I mentioned, I think we talked about last week, he was guest host of Jeopardy. So, he's having time with that. He's got other confrontations going around with family and and everything else, what is best for him. And to me, one of the teams, like you mentioned, is the Denver Broncos have been a talk. If he still wants to be in a trade, looking around, I mean, if it makes sense. Denver's got a lot of good receivers. I think their defense is trying to come up and merge to be that team. Obviously, they got Kansas City still to worry about right here in our neck of the woods. But obviously, they want to be a team that competes. And I think whatever's best for Aaron Rodgers is got to be best for him, because obviously the organization, it doesn't look like they're on good terms. And I feel like this is what I believe, Kruck. Obviously, this is will be our last show. I'm not going to say anything else, but by the time this summer comes around, I think you'll see Aaron Rodgers be traded from Green Bay. And I say that because it just looks like overall that he's not really with the organization. And it's, even though, yes, the general manager wants him, of course you want him. He's your quarterback. He's there. You're part of the organization. But it's up to him, right?
And absolutely right. Since the legalization of sports betting, this company named DraftKings, and this is not a sponsorship for them, but DraftKings has been doing a bunch of random things you can bet on, and one of the things is who Aaron Rodgers will be playing for come September 12th. The current favorites are that he'll return to Green Bay, but the next four go in this order: Denver Broncos, the Las Vegas Raiders, the New Orleans Saints, surprisingly in third, and then the Carolina Panthers. And
Saints, that's interesting.
The top two teams have been on the market the entire time. The third team, the New Orleans Saints, hasn't been talked about, but when you think about it, it's reasonable, because they went from one great white wonder in Drew Brees to now picking up potentially another great white wonder. And then the Panthers just got rid of Bridgewater. They brought in Darnold, but now that they see an actually good quarterback is available, I think Darnold might be hitting the buses to somewhere else pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you said that list, I mean, the Broncos and Raiders I could see happening, obviously, with, like you said, getting a franchise. But I don't know. I'm just, the Saints are a good one, but I'm just wondering when I see the Saints, like Aaron Rodgers in a Saints uniform. I'm sorry, Kruck. It doesn't look like it matches well for me. But you never know. You might be right. We'll have to see. This is the world of sports. We never know what will happen. But yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, it's any of these teams that are looking for franchise kind of quarterbacks and what they need, you're going to get going Aaron Rodgers. He's always been that. I think he's a very humble guy. He takes care of himself well, and I think that's important for what the NFL needs. And I think he still feels like he's underrated. You feel like, you got Tom Brady and other receivers looking at him, and still Aaron Rodgers hasn't got up there yet. And obviously he's always been to the NFC Championship games, but obviously he wants to get to that Super Bowl, but it just has never happened for him. So I don't know. Maybe if he goes to another team, maybe he'll get his goal, maybe his wish.
Well, speaking of Aaron Rodgers, we're about to bring in somebody who is a fan of Aaron Rodgers, but we're not going to talk about Aaron Rodgers. We're going to bring in the sports information director and our good pal Tim Hackett to talk about the NHL playoff pictures. So we're going to dive right into it. And welcome into our first ever hockey talk with none other than the hockey man, Tim Hackett. How you doing today?
Doing great, Kruck. Thanks a lot for having me.
Dude, it's a blast. You always seem to find a way to make it into the podcast, just never on the podcast. So I figured I'd give you the chair today.
Thank you. I'm hoping I can live up to those expectations.
So what are some key teams that need to make a push to be taken seriously for playoff contention in NHL?
The teams that aren't in right now, or the teams that are that you don't think are getting enough love?
Teams that are right on the crest of either making it, or you still have enough time to really make a push and get their name into contention.
Well, I think even right now, kind of ironically, a team that is firmly in the playoffs right now but is not getting a lot of love or attention is the Carolina Hurricanes. And they are the number one team in their division right now. 4 divisions, 4 teams from each division make the postseason in this weird modified NHL season this year. Everything has changed completely due to COVID protocols and some other fallouts have actually delayed the start of the playoffs by about a week and a half. But the Hurricanes have been 1 or 2 in their division for a lot of the season, and they still do not get a whole lot of attention nationally. So they don't need to do any work to actually make it into the postseason right now. But a team like that is, I think, a team that, again, not a powerhouse, not a blue blood, but they've been very good the last couple of years. After not making the playoffs for about a half dozen straight seasons, they are now in the playoffs consistently and maybe will be the number 1 team in their division. So that is one team that I think a lot more people nationwide need to pay attention to. And then when it comes to teams that are kind of on the cusp that are trying to push to get into the playoffs, the St. Louis Blues right now are on the fringe. Obviously, the Stanley Cup champions from 2 years ago in 2019, the last full real season in the NHL. That is another team that hasn't even qualified for the playoffs this year. It's been kind of an up and down season for them. Hockey fans will remember Jordan Bennington, the goaltender that year, who came out of nowhere, literally came out of the minors to take that team to the Stanley Cup Finals and win the Stanley Cup that year. It's been kind of an up and down season for him this year after they gave him a big contract. So, I mean, honestly, his future kind of still to be determined even after that masterful rookie season that he had. Technically not even his rookie season, but his first season in the NHL. But obviously, he needs to play better. They've got a couple of key pieces healthy, like Vladimir Tarasenko, to actually help them get into the playoffs. And if they do, then they'll be a tough out for a team like Vegas. But, I mean, I think a team like Vegas could go very far regardless.
So you mentioned it. Vegas is number 1 in the West, and then St. Louis Blues is number 4 right now in the West. The middle 2 teams, though, the Colorado Avalanche and the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah.
Are those 2 teams that opponents should really be on the lookout for, or are those kind of filler spots?
And that's a great point. The Minnesota Wild are a team that fits the bill of the first question that you asked. A kind of an under-the-radar team that not a lot of people know about because they have really changed their philosophy this year. In the past, under Bruce Boudreau, their head coach, they had been really defensive style, grind it out, try to win a 2-1 game all the time if possible. Not really the case anymore. They're much more open offensively. Kirill Kaprizov is very much going to the front runner for Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year in the NHL. He is dynamic. He's a little bit older than your typical rookie, so he's kind of gotten some negative attention in that regard, but he has really been excellent for the Wild this season. And I think that is a team that actually it is totally under the radar in regards to the rest of the NHL. However, they could end up facing the Colorado Avalanche in the first round, and that is a problem because that team is dynamic. They're excellent in all phases, especially on offense. And Philip Grubauer has given them good goaltending, which is something they have not had in a long time. So they are stacked on all phases, and it's a shame that one of Vegas and Colorado is going to have to leave before the end of the divisional round.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Just looking at it, you are a Boston Bruins fan yourself. The Washington Capitals are right now in first place in the East. The Pittsburgh Pirates in second. The New York Islanders in third. And then the Boston Bruins in fourth. Do you think Boston needs to make 1 or 2 more big pushes to try to get themselves into a higher seed, making an easier route for the Cup?
I mean, speaking totally honestly, I don't know that it matters because regardless of where those 4 teams finish, and those are the 4 teams that will be in the playoffs from that division, they'll face it's going to be a matchup between those 4 in the first round. That's how the playoffs are going to work this year. I think any of those series is going to be really difficult regardless of who has home ice advantage, if you will. So, yeah, if the Bruins finish second or first, obviously, in the division, they will have home ice in game 1 of that series. But that always, in theory, helps. But with minimized fan attendance, it hasn't really mattered too much, but in theory, attendance will be able to expand a little bit more as we get further into the playoffs, so maybe it will matter in later rounds. But right now, obviously you want to finish first in the division, but I don't think for that specific division that it will matter very much because both of those 2 series, regardless of how the 4 shakes out, who plays who in the first round, that's still very much to be determined. All of those series are going to be tough. And all 4 of those teams are really good, and they're all conference final caliber.
And then one last question before we let you go. Personally, I think that the Vegas Golden Knights are my personal team to make the run at the Cup, take home the Cup this year. Who do you have winning it?
Right now, I'm not sure. There are so many good teams, not to kind of duck the question, but I legitimately, looking at how the playoffs look right now, with all the prospective first-round matchups, all of them are going to be really good. I don't think there is any gimme matchup except maybe for whoever Toronto plays in the first round, because the fourth team that comes out of the Canadian division is just not going to be very good. But Toronto's going to have a tough challenge in the second round if they end up facing a team like Edmonton. So Canadian fans, meaning fans from Canada, not fans of Montreal, are going to be tabbing Toronto to win the Stanley Cup this year like they always have. And they have a good shot with Austin Matthews scoring 40 goals this year, which is insane in a 56-game season. But I don't think it's a shoo-in. I think Vegas is a great choice. I think Tampa Bay, of course, the reigning Cup champs, can't be overlooked, but they're going to have to get through Carolina in their division. And like I said, any of those four teams from the East, what used to be called the East, Pittsburgh, Washington, Boston, and the Islanders, all four of those teams are legitimate Cup threats if they can get it together. So I really don't know how it's going to go. But if you want to pick, I think a trendy pick would be Tampa Bay against Vegas or Tampa Bay against Colorado has been the likely pick all season.
Absolutely. And this has been our first episode of Hockey Talk here on the podcast. And while I got you here, I just want to say thank you so much for being such a great help to the show. Honestly, you really helped out with this a lot more than people at home really know about, and I just want to say thank you on camera.
I appreciate that, man. You guys have done an incredible job. You guys have built this up from absolutely nothing, and it's been a pleasure to just be a little bit of a part of it. So thanks for having me. But great job.
Thank you. And we're going to send it back. And that is some great insight there by Tim Hackett, just an absolute expert when it comes to the NHL. And hopefully his Boston Bruins can make a push for the Cup this year. But in other terms of winter sports, the NBA, well, the NBA's got some interesting stuff going on, doesn't it, Max?
Well, yeah. I mean, coming around is playoff time, coming in a week or so. But we look at it left, like I mentioned, 2 weeks left in the regular season. All the NBA teams right now, they're fighting for that spot. They don't want to be in the play-in tournament that everyone's talking about this year. Right now, I'm looking at all the teams here. The Eastern Conference right now, the Sixers, the Nets, and the Bucks are right now in kind of the control of the Eastern Conference. Right now, the Sixers 45-21 as their overall. The Nets at 43-23, and the Bucks at 42-24. And the teams right now that are in the play-in tournament as of this moment here, we look at it, we have the Miami's in there, we have Charlotte, we have Indiana Pacers, and the Washington Wizards are right now all in that spot for the Eastern Conference play-in tournament. As for the Western Conference, the three leading teams we got are the Utah Jazz, the Phoenix Suns, and the Denver Nuggets. The Jazz are 48-18, the Suns are 47-19, and the Nuggets, with obviously Nikola Jokic, 44-22. And quickly, Kruck, with the West play-in game, we got Portland, Memphis, Golden State, and San Antonio. Right now, Portland's leading it at 37-29. So, Kruck, I said a lot there. That was a lot of teams, a lot of records, but when we look at the NBA right now, who do you think is going to make a big playoff push or teams to watch coming into playoff time?
Well, a team to definitely watch, the Lakers. The Lakers have LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kyle Kuzma, so many great NBA players that are playing right now. They probably have one of the most stacked teams aside from the Brooklyn Nets. But somehow they lost 3 games to the Clippers, ended up getting swept by the Clippers in their season series. And the Clippers is really a team, at least in my neck of the woods, that goes so undermentioned, having Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and nobody's really talking about them in terms of, my ESPN, what I listen to. But James Harden is hurt. He's confident he'll be back for the playoffs, so that will definitely be a great help for the Brooklyn Nets. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant definitely could use the help.
Yeah.
But I do think that those two, as well as Blake Griffin, and then, everybody else on their team, Joe Harris, you name it down the list, I think they'll be good for the game. LeBron James earlier was complaining about the play-in tournament and thinking that whoever made it should be fired. Not his exact words, but paraphrasing what he said, now his team is in the front runner for playing in the play-in tournament. So it's kind of, poetic justice.
Yeah, I think it's all it's happening because obviously they're close in the play-in tournament. And, and to me, just to quickly before I get into my take here, I would probably say the play-in tournament I think is actually better for the NBA. And I think that's obviously better for the NBA because it brings in more competition for those lower list of teams. You know what I mean? It makes people want to keep watching the playoffs and keep being more engaged with these other teams, especially like some of these teams that are like when I mentioned Indiana and Washington, they're both below 500 right now teams at this moment. And imagine them getting into the playoffs and competing for it. I mean, you just don't see that. And it's just very cool to have that overall. But if I got to ask one of my teams, I mean, the Lakers obviously are a good one. They're fully healthy. I believe the Lakers can be very dangerous. But the Phoenix Suns, to me, I just think something about Phoenix and how they were when they were in the bubble and how they have now getting Chris Paul and having Devin Booker and Aiden. They're a team just, to me, that's going to be watched. And when I look at right now, Devin Booker is averaging 25.4 points per game. And obviously Chris Paul right now is also around the 20 points per game too. So both of those guys shooting very well for their respective roles. And I think that's very important for this team, getting a two-court backcourt team. And obviously they've beaten the Jazz and they've beaten, the Clippers and other teams like that. And right now, they're really good at home as well. Right now, it looks like 26-8 or something at home. And that's going to be very important, especially in the playoffs. We know that, Kruck. Having home field is going to be an important part, especially if it goes to a Game 6, Game 7. You get that home field, and obviously it'll help yourself out. But like you mentioned, too, quickly, the Nets, I think they're still another team to watch, even though I think they're struggling at the moment. Looks like the last couple of games, they have been 5-6. In the past level of games, so obviously they got to get their mojo back, and that's obviously a little bit maybe to do with James Harden not being there and having Kevin Durant, Kyrie as the load. But I'm going to say this, one quick team in the East that I like is how about what's the other team happening in New York? The New York Knicks. What is going on with the Knicks? Everyone was talking about, this team ain't going to be there. They ain't going to look good. They don't have everybody. But the Knicks are right now, they are 37-29. And in fourth place in the Eastern Conference. And they got Julius Randle, R.J. Barrett, and how about Derrick Rose still balling out? How about that? That guy is still balling out at his age and still doing that. That, to me, is incredible. And this team is finding ways to compete in the Eastern Conference. And right now, they could be a team to watch. The Bucks, obviously, they got to find their, not get out of playoff woes. And obviously, they can win a playoff game with Giannis. And obviously, he doesn't get diminished in that time. But it's going to be an interesting tournament, especially that play-in tournament. I like that idea what the NBA did there, Krupp.
And looking at the NBA right now, the Utah Jazz having one of the best records in all of basketball. If you told anybody about 2 to 3 years ago that the Utah Jazz were going to be meaningful in the NBA playoffs, I'm pretty sure that they might have smacked you across the face. But nowadays you say the Utah Jazz are overrated, and people will get very mad at you. The Utah Jazz are 48-18, and right now, it's their tournament to lose. The Utah Jazz, in my opinion, are the favorite to win it. But you did bring up the New York Knicks. How about another New York team that's celebrating an anniversary today? 5 years ago today, the world-famous Bartolo Colon hit his one and only home run. And with that little segment, we're going to move right into the MLB. There's another no-hitter this week, and that begs the question, how easy is it really to pitch a no-hitter? 3 of them so far this year, and it's one of the hardest things to do in baseball, harder being obviously a perfect game. But you got the scoop on the no-hitter?
Kruck, I mean, like you mentioned, to me, it's just crazy that there's like 3 no-hitters so far here in baseball. I mean, usually you can only get like a no-hitter once in a while. It comes around, but already having 3 already in the season, what's going on? The batters, they not getting their hit sticks going on. They not helping themselves out. It's kind of a little confusing me. But obviously, this no-hitter was obviously from Orioles pitcher John Means. And John Means, this was against the Mariners. He said he only faced 27 batters or hitters from the Mariners, and he had 12 strikeouts with it and threw only 113 total pitches, which to me, that's pretty good there, Kruck. Obviously getting your stats. And he almost had a perfect game, believe it or not, but he had a wild pitch that went by that obviously made him not get that. So obviously that's kind of tough, a little heartbroken they get a perfect game. But in the same time, you still get a no-hitter. So you get one or the other. You get both, you get both. But obviously, that was actually the first no-hitter, the individual no-hitter for the Orioles since Jim Palmer in 1969. And obviously, that pitcher, I believe, and I found some research, he had the most wins in the 1970s with 186 total wins when he was pitching there for the Orioles. And that's very cool. That's big company right there, Kruck. You know what I mean? And he's not a mess-around pitcher. And I guess I'm final before I let you get your say in it. I just think, still to me, no-hitters are tough. You know what I mean? No-hitters are always tough. You know, it's always, you're not going to have perfect pitches. It ain't going to go your way. And sometimes you got your four-seam not going fast enough, or you don't have your curveball going well, or whatever the case is. It's just everything's not your way. To me, personally, I think it's just maybe it's because the teams aren't, preparing as much as usual. Maybe there's something behind that, like with COVID going on. I mean, I'm not just saying that COVID's a problem, but, I'm just saying that obviously maybe there's a factor going on there as well. But it's still great to have 3 no-hitters in baseball. Wow, that's incredible.
Absolutely. 3 no-hitters this season alone, and we still have a long way to go.
Yes.
But just a few more things about Joe Means. He wasn't a high draft pick. He was an 11th round pick back in 2014, so he's been grinding for a long time to get a shot here. He ended up being he made the All-Star game as a rookie in 2019 when he finally got called up. But surprisingly enough, he was from an Orioles team that lost 108 games that season. So the team was not doing good, but apparently he did well enough to make the All-Star game. During the no-hitter, he had 12 strikeouts through 9 complete innings. 26 of his first pitches were strikes. So out of 27 batters, 26 of them, his first pitch was a strike to him. He had 13 called strikes, 26 swinging strikes, and then 25 foul balls. He finished the game with 3 groundouts and 12 flyouts. But what makes Joe Means' no-hitter so much more really interesting than the rest of these no-hitters is that this guy has very high velo compared to the rest of the pitchers who have had no-hitters this year. They've used more junk pitches trying to get, people to chase the curveball, the changeup, trying to get people to change other things. And then this guy comes in just straight up blazing the heat by him. Now, yes, Rodon does have some heat behind him. He is a majority fastball pitcher, but comparing his fastball to Joe Means' fastball, Means has got about 2 to 3 more miles per hour on him, which is a big difference when you're talking low to mid-90s.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. Good stats there. And before we move on here, Kruck, I just want to say this is big, too, here for the Orioles as well. Right now, when you look at the Orioles, they're 15-16 in the AL East at this moment, still trailing behind the leader right now, the Boston Red Sox, at the moment. So obviously, they need to keep having production from Means. They need to keep having production from him. They need to compete because the Orioles, I believe, were one of the worst teams, I think, last season in baseball. So, and I think that's really important for them, especially at this moment, being about 500 where they're at, to probably make a run here into contention.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And since we're talking about baseball, we're going to transfer it to Coach Cronk, the Avila sports team's head coach. We're going to talk to him about the Royals. They just lost 3 games to the Cleveland. We're kind of need an explanation there, as well as his team. So we're going to head over there right now. So as mentioned, I'm talking with the Avila baseball coach, Coach Cronk. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's great to have you on the show. Talk a little bit more about baseball. Last week, one of the guys we talked with was Sean Sumi about the Cubs. This week, we're talking more about Avila baseball and the Royals with the man to talk to, Coach Cronk. So, being a Royals guy, they just got swept by the Cleveland Indians, and they're about to start a road series against the Chicago White Sox. And for more perspective, the Royals are sitting in 9th, and the White Sox are in 8th. Do you think this is going to be another sweep for the Royals either way, or do you think it's going to be a split series?
I think the Royals are gonna get it turned around a little bit. They've had a rough series this last one, but I'll go with a split.
And then the Royals made some key pickups during the offseason, and so far it looks like they're paying off with Michael A. Taylor and then Santana as well as Bennington. Are these players going to be able to produce like this in the long haul, or is this kind of like a fluke start in your opinion?
Well, I'll be honest with you. When the way they started out with, Michael A. Taylor having some big hits in that first homestand, I was very pleasantly surprised with that. I didn't really expect that out of the get-go, and I really was excited about Benintendi. Getting him, I think he's a quality major leaguer and knows how to. Knows how to put it together offensively for sure. And I think, coming in and filling in the old Alex Gordon shoes in the outfield. I think he's a better hitter for sure. And I think this last series, seeing him kind of getting going a little bit, I'm excited. I think he's good enough hitter that he'll be able to provide a lot of quality at bats for the Royals in that spot.
Absolutely. And then transferring from the Royals to another Kansas City team, your Avila Eagles.
All right.
Jared Fry was second-team catcher, and then Hunter Reed was an honorable mention at shortstop, I do believe. Were there any other players on your team that you think got snubbed in a way that should have been on one of the teams?
I mean, we had a tough year, and stats-wise, nowadays we all know. The last, probably 20 years, is everything just looked at as offensive numbers. And we really struggled offensively. So I think unless you have guys hitting, in the mid-300s, there's so many good hitters in this league that if you're not hitting in the mid-300s, you just don't really have a chance of getting any postseason, accolades. But obviously Jared Fry and Hunter Reed both had, really, really good offensive numbers. So it's easy to talk about those guys. We had other guys that had good seasons for us and good moments for sure, but overall just didn't quite have the numbers to back that up as far as when you're really lobbying for your guys on all conference type stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This was one of the more difficult aspects of the game. What part, pitching, hitting, fielding, which one of those three key aspects do you really feel like the team needs to improve on before the start of next year?
Well, I tell you what, I've always been a firm believer in pitching and defense. If you don't have it, you don't win. But I feel like that if you catch the baseball and throw the baseball as good or better than the teams that you're playing, you have a chance to win. And you don't even have to look at offense side. If you're catching it and throwing it better than your opponent, 9 times out of 10 you're going to win. We all love the grand slams and 3-run home runs, and that kind of gets you back in the game. But that don't happen all the time, and so I do feel that pitching and defense has to be a premium for us to have a chance to compete in this league.
And then I understand that some sports teams this year actually had what the NAI is calling a COVID year, where you get an extra year eligibility. Is that true for baseball as well?
Yes.
So you're going to have a lot of players coming back and then new players coming in. Who do you think are going to be one of the positions where a new player you think will help shake things up for the team?
You're talking about just what I already have on the team?
Like a new player that you're going to bring in, like a freshman or a transfer.
Oh, well, I could say this about every single year, no matter good or bad. You're always constantly trying to improve your current team. The big thing is we've got to do – we got to get better on the mound. We have to get better on the mound. Talking to a lot of players, that I think there's a lot of positions wide open. We're really fortunate to have Jared Fry back next year, and he's kind of going to be that anchor for us. But I think overall we have a lot of guys that's got to get better and continue to develop. We were in a situation where we played some guys that probably weren't ready to play this year, but we kind of had to. And I've looked back other years I've had. We had some guys that I played early and saw those dividends their junior or senior year by playing them, a little bit earlier than when they were really developed to be in that position. And those are tough calls on a lot of those guys, and that's not their fault. A lot of times guys struggle a little bit because they're not quite ready. But, in a situation that we're in, I believe that will hopefully play into our favor next year and in their career as well.
Absolutely. Well, it's been awesome getting to talk to you and to pick your brain. We're going to head back to the regular program. It's been Coach Cronk's segment of Baseball Talk. And that has been the talk with Coach Cronk. And one of the things that we just discussed not too long ago, the Nolan Ryan fight against Robin Ventura. You've never seen it before today, Matt?
Kruck, I've actually have not, and now I kind of now looking at it, I'm like, wow, that was an interesting fight right there.
100% the greatest MLB fight in history. I'm looking for someone to top it next. But as we move forward, Avila softball in the KCAC tournament. Avila has finished the KCAC tournament in second. They ended up losing the first game, winning 3 games in a row on just one day. They won another game, and then they ended up losing in the championship against Ottawa. And that will mean that Ottawa and Bethany will get outright bids, and Avila will await to see who gets the final bids for the NAIA tournament. You got anything on them?
Kruck, I just want to congratulate the team. I mean, after winning 3 straight games in a row on a certain day, I mean that's always hard to do, and I mean you got to give that team a lot of credit, especially losing your first game. How your mental state, how everyone's got to feel before the game, and that's very important. Especially, obviously now they got to wait, right? It almost feels like our football team all over again, just waiting and seeing what they can do inside for the tournament. Obviously, we all hope they can get in, and obviously for all these seniors, especially, obviously for the seniors to get obviously another chance is always important too. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Avila University did have some KCAC players. I know Kennedy Meyer was one of them. Looking at it, Madison McKinney was another one at the pitching position, and Trinity Morris as well. Trinity Morris has been a absolute huge help to the team. But looking at it, we wish the Avila softball team the best of luck moving forward. Hopefully they get a spot in the NAIA tournament, but we'll find out later. And as mentioned, this is the season finale of Season 1, so we're going to bring all of the camera crew, all the helpers around back, and we're all going to wave goodbye to you because it's been a huge thing. It started off as just a class project of mine, but we ended up having a lot of fun with it. As you guys remember, Tim Hackett from the NHL, Justin Brown from the NBA Talk, Mad Max as always. Thank you all for tuning in, and hopefully we get renewed for Season 2. Until next time, we'll see you later.